Welcome to Building Stories, a podcast where we tell honest and sometimes funny stories about construction and digital transformation and other things. Very excited to have Alexiou with us today. Ryan has an illustrious past in construction. Ryan, do you want to maybe introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us what you've done over the years.
Yeah. How are we, guys? Illustrious past sets me up for failure, but look, I've been in construction my whole life for 20 odd years now, or my whole career, I should say. I started off as fresh out of high school, cleaning some tower crane bolts for a family friend that owned a crane business. So I started from there and worked my way up into kind of some management positions in health and safety with a few turns on the way through. So, been in health and safety capacity for probably the last 10, 12 years. And really enjoyed that aspect of kind of the people component of what we do, and use that as a way to learn broader elements of the building industry as well. So certainly wasn't what I set out to do, but one of those roles you fall into and work out you enjoy it and kick on from there. So that's me and what I've been doing for forever, really.
And big construction companies, small ones, like you've worked across a range?
Yeah, so started with, as I said, tower crane background, working for a company called LCR Group, which were a family-owned business. And they operated, kind of the eastern seaboard, and then moved into they got bought out by a private equity firm out of the US. And then so I ended up jumping onto a labour hire company called Dow's Building Services, which is just a local group for southeast Queensland, and managed through them to jump on to kind of major builder at the time, Abbey Group, which ended up getting moulded into the Lend-Lease kind of remit. So I was with Abbey Group, and that was my first foray into kind of tier one mega projects, where I was doing, I was at Queensland Children's Hospital, which at the time was the biggest building project in the country, certainly the biggest in Queensland, and got a flavour for what big scale construction looks like, and really enjoyed the risk element of it, of what it's a bit contrary in terms of being in health and safety, but I really enjoyed what big projects bring in terms of it's a different speed, where you go from being what I call a 100-meter sprinter, where you're doing these short, sharp projects and in and out, to you're now running marathons and doing 3 to 5 year builds, but it allows you to sink your teeth into some really juicy challenges that you're not normally doing. Was with Abbey Group for a few years as well, and then into Lend-Lease, and that big mega company probably didn't suit me as much, I felt. So I jumped into another family-owned business, being Hanson Yuncken, and did 5 years with those guys, and absolutely loved that place. Was fortunate enough to meet some really good characters in there, and ended up doing a bit of a hybrid role, where I was primarily in a health and safety capacity, but also helping the highway team do some cool stuff in there.
That's interesting to bring that up. So they obviously built their own system in-house a little bit. And they would have had some challenges along the way.
Yeah, that's right. And that was the one thing for them. They really were probably the other end, where builders typically tend to go, we just build stuff. We're not this IT stuff's a bit out there. And then, I went into the other end of the spectrum with Mick Parks and Dan Smith and those guys, learning about digital construction and BIM, which was only just kind of fairly new at the time, and building our own systems to manage our own processes, and all that kind of cool stuff, which was really awesome in that business. And so I was with them for a few years, and then ended up missing some of the bigger end scale projects. So I ended up jumping into multiplex and going to Queen's Wharf and doing that bigger scale stuff again. And was again, really enjoyed that business, and was with them for a few years. And then kind of landscape change in Queensland. IR stuff became really intense and heavy, and probably just needed a change of pace from that high level intensity. So it took a turn into the software world and consulting and working for myself, which I'm enjoying at the moment. So it's had a few twists and turns.
Until we want some more pain again.
yeah,
I was going to
the good,
ask. I was going to
yeah,
ask. What's your favorite kind of project? Like it sounds like it's when you sink your teeth into these hard things. That's kind of what brings out some, I guess, the joy. It's this hard slog. It's this hard
yeah.
marathon. Is that? I mean, what's the prerequisite there to having a good project that you love?
Yeah, for me, it's got to have a certain risk profile, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean the sense of like, what's the what's the style of building like? What's the elements that are really different and unique and really challenging in the sense of it's not easy to do. So,
Mm,
if you look at the Queensland Children's Hospital, it was two of the busiest intersections in Brisbane at the time, Vulture Street. It was the first of its kind, big mega hospital, 15 stories, building over the top of things. It had its own energy plant. So I was like, oh, this is cool. It's a bit different and really good. At the time, I was thinking this is really good for the CV. So that really drew me in. And then obviously Queen's Wharf, biggest project in the city, and again at the time, from a building perspective in the country, built on top of the busiest road in if not Australia, certainly in Queensland in terms of the Riverside Expressway, and multi-store, multi-building type projects. So I just found these longer projects where you can build a good team and culture that has this unique kind of risk profile really drew me in as not everyone can do this, and am I up for it as well, and a bit of a personal challenge. So
mm.
that's the stuff where I like to test myself out and go, can you sustain it and really survive? So
Well, it's kind of it's what brings out the ultimate builder. It's not
yeah,
just building, but you got to build a team, and you got to build a program, and you got to build solutions, and it's all on the fly. And it's like it's that classic say, we're going to build the plane as we're flying it,
yeah,
and so
that's it.
you got to get this thing built by the time you've landed, So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and those bigger ones, you've normally got a bit of a decent lead in from a design phase before you really hit the ground running. So you go, oh, cool. Like Queen's Wharf, we went 2 years of my involvement in terms of pricing and estimation and pulling apart value engineering and all that stuff, let alone the years before me. And then all of a sudden you start building on site and go, oh crap, we got to hurry up and actually pull our finger out and get this stuff done. So you definitely, no matter the size and scale, building it as you fly it. But it just gives you that little bit more kind of opportunity for consultation and feedback and market testing and all those sorts of things, which again, you always think you got enough time until you're actually into it. And then you go, yeah, we got to get moving. So that's kind of my narrative where I talk about, you go from running 100-meter sprints to marathons. It's a different style of project, but it's equally as rewarding, particularly from a survival perspective.
mm-hmm.
On all these projects, can you think back and just pick out one or two stories of, let's say where mistakes were made and lessons were learnt? Because it's often a
Yeah,
good way to learn, isn't it? When things fall over, I know I've done it myself. You're like, oh, we're going to do it this way the next time.
yeah. Look, I think I've got plenty of memories I've tried to push to the back of the mind and forget about. But particularly in a hospital setting, I think we really undervalued at the time kind of the user testing aspect of who's going to use it in the end and what goes where. So we started building these cool rooms that cardiac earth rooms and all the electrical stuff that comes with it, and these lead lined rooms where all your imagery stuff's done, and we're going, yeah, let's just put this here and that there, and yeah, the med gas can go over in the corner, and don't worry about it too much. And then all of a sudden, you've built this thing. Nurses come in and go, yeah, that doesn't quite work because how we operate means this needs to go there, and all that type of stuff. So learned a lot about who actually uses the spaces, but from a team perspective, I think the biggest learnings from it's always about the right people with you. I think it's simple, but probably speaks volumes. Where um, um, in all those cases, you need that kind of no dickheads policy of people that can just come in and get in the trenches with you and on any given day go to battle, because it's really tough and intense, and everyone's commercially, as you guys know, trying to do what they can to pull in certain directions. So for me, it's always just about the simple things, but mate, there's heaps of war stories, particularly at Queen's Wharf. I don't think anyone needs to hide anything there, but yeah, there was plenty of times where we went, you know what, we're just going to be a bit stubborn and go in a certain direction, and it bit us in the ass more than a few times where I had to get up in front of 500-700 people and and plead for forgiveness and let's get back to work type stuff. But yeah, I might leave that for a few beer conversations.
We'll put that behind a paywall somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I guess I think you mentioned, roles and stuff on projects. Do you want to talk a little bit about, I don't know, like we've worked with design managers, project managers, then you've got kind of this site safety guy.
Yeah.
Explain to the audience a little bit, I guess, the importance of these different roles, because, in different countries, they might talk about things differently. Do you want to just talk about your experience?
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective in the health and safety world, what we do in its simplest form, it's obviously looking after the people on the site, but we get pulled in a few different directions. So it's good in terms of we get to help, really look at when we're pricing work, how you're actually going to build it and pull apart the methodology and all that type of stuff, which is the real fun bit when you.
So safety and design, that's what.
All the site establishment, safety and design stuff. How's it going to work for the end user? That's the real fun bit where you're really doing that kind of work as imagined element. So I think that's the real cool bit. Particularly where some of the technology space comes into play, and you can start visualizing what you're going to do. That's a real good fun bit. From there, we wear many hats. We're part-time lawyers, part-time nurses, we're part-time psychologists. We're pulling apart contracts. We're writing scopes of work or helping to write scopes of work. We're reading.
You're making it sound very hard. Like,
well, I'm trying to paint a picture of we're quite professional and not just. Yeah, again, like we've got a pretty bad rap sheet in my history, so I try to paint the other side of what we do. But look, it's
a holistic approach. Yeah,
it's a lot of interpreting legislation and how does it apply to what we do in its simplest form. But ultimately, it's that people component at the end of the day of, once upon a time it was how do we protect them in terms of a work environment factor, but now it's very much evolved to the individual and the psychological bit, the human factors. It's moved on a fair bit. So again, it's quite a few different elements to the role, but there's, again, like anything, there's specialists in certain areas. But for me, and kind of why I have affinity to what you guys do and your background, is I really like that design process and pulling it apart, and how can we really de-risk projects, but at the same time, really help users understand their way through the mechanisms of how we build, how do we pass over information to the end user. All that stuff is where I probably get the most satisfaction out of, because it's the fun bit. It's how does this thing get constructed?
With the human element, like you're saying, and like you earlier, you just talking about bringing people along with the journey and in the trenches with you, and some of the stuff. Obviously, you've got to have a communication skill level that you've got to, bring people along. They've got to buy into the whole thing, and these construction projects, many stakeholders, and the bigger ones, more and more of them. So some real challenges, obviously, there.
Yeah, it's hard. It's probably the hardest part of what we do, because different levels as well. So how you talk to the worker on the coalface is different to how you might talk to a client in a boardroom and try to sell how you're going to manage a certain element of a build, or do some performance reporting type discussions. So you've got to be able to contextualize as well. So it's one of those things as you go that you can kind of modify how you talk and particularly when you're dealing with a coalface and trying to get them to do something they typically don't want to do, and we're a bit of a pain in the ass for them. My kind of suite of where I found works is you start to actually talk about what they do and the trade, and they're typically really proud of the work they do for obvious reasons. So once you start involving what they're doing and how they do it and why, and then add the value piece to what you need from your side, it tends to get a bit more buy-in. But again, you've got to be able to change the way you do things to who you're dealing with on the day, and that's the hardest bit. And
that's what I was going to say. Like, where do you actually start? Like you're obviously got a lot of experience. You can help, a lot of different businesses at different sizes. But like, do you just sit down and go back to basics and try and figure out where they're at, or how do you start that engagement?
Yeah, well, I guess if I talk about my business now, it's really understanding what the business journey is and where they see themselves longer term.
Okay.
And then, so, again, we'll probably dive into this later, but that developer kind of builder profile of where I'm doing a lot of work now, you're sitting down with those types of people at the start of it and going, well, what does the business profile look like? Where do you actually want to end up? Do you want to build 10 projects at once? Do you want to do one at a time and just have a really good, neat little crew that you go from job to job on? And
do they have the same answer, or they have different
no,
aspirations?
it's different, which is the fun bit. The variety is the bit that keeps you going. So yeah, it's interesting to see some that have come from construction themselves and being on the builder side and going, you know what, I'm going to have a crack at being my own developer builder and do my own projects. And they'll go from project to project and just have a really solid crew of people that they enjoy having a bit of banter and fun with, and just enjoy the ride. And then, typically they start to evolve from there. Once they've done one or two, three projects that they're successful at, they then start going, oh, well, let's add another crew and build on it. So there's never one size fits all, but yeah, you've got to be able to contextualize to your audience and where it's got to fit their business profile and where they want to be. Otherwise,
so you're starting out as this business coach, almost like I'm going to help you achieve your dreams type thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and then I popped the balloon about 3 months in. No, but no. It's good fun, and
it's just step by step. What are we going to do next to achieve that? Right.
That's it. So it's good and it's exciting because, again, I get to lead in at the early phase where they haven't started on site yet. They've started some form of design, and they're super excited and energetic about what they're doing. So you get into the throes of it very early on and get to see the hype and the excitement, and everyone's super into it. And then probably reality hits later down the track.
Yeah, true. I just keep thinking about, businesses are at different stages. Like some are just on pen and paper, and some are like they've bought 20 bits of software and trying to implement it. Like, do you see that in the people you're talking to?
All the time. We see customers that really start at the phase of, okay, we want a one-size-fits-all approach. And then they go through a phase of, we can't quite get it right. So now we'll start diversifying some of our systems and start adding some kind of more bespoke solutions into what they do. And then, they go through a natural journey of, okay, how do we now start collating this back in? And then I've seen, large-scale companies where it's like, oh my God, we've got 53 different solutions, and how do we track this? And our budget's going crazy, and how do we now start deleting things that aren't being used effectively? And there's a broad range. So, I mean, that's why you guys exist, because the suite of offerings you guys provide is so beneficial. But people are really trying to get back to basics on what do we need, what adds value, and how is it effective for what we do? Because technology in its heyday, there's a point product for everything, and it got to a point of just, where did all this stuff come from, and is it really adding value versus how do we use it in a way that, as I said, adds value for a business, and then how do we use it from an intelligence perspective to get better with what we do. So I think that's probably the one I see businesses grappling with the most, is the latter of, that's great, I've got some info in a silo. How do I use it? How do I get this to talk to this point that's solving this problem over here? Because in isolation, it's good, but it's not painting the bigger picture.
No, I had a
There's too
conversation
much
like
noise.
that, with someone this morning. They're like, got one bit of software that's probably from like 1995 or something.
Yeah.
And then they've got two other bits and none of it's talking to each other. And I'm just looking at it going, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can solve this. But at the same time, they want to do it step by step. And so you're kind of having to go, look, we have to almost chuck a lot of that out to do this, guys. So how do you manage that change? You have to kind of bring people on a journey.
Yeah, well, I guess from me, there's a couple of different ways I've approached it. And again, I've certainly seen the ones where it seems too big to do it in one hit. And that's almost like a comfort blanket, that it's like, it's not right, it's not happy, but it's like, I know it can do a bit of this, so I don't want to let it go completely. But what I've typically found is like either a process mapping exercise, which is obviously very elaborate and goes through the here's everything you actually need to deliver piece, or there's actually just the, what do you want, what do you need, what's the actual high level objectives you want. So I've got a client right now. We're at the starting phase where it's like what you obviously need to have elements in place. So how do you want to do it? Do you want tendering in place? Do you want a module for project management? Do you want quality systems? Do you want safety systems? Do you want BIM? Like what do you actually want? And start to then drive the, okay, well, here's some point solutions, or here's the actual outcome that you require based on that need. And what we're finding more and more is people gravitating towards that. It starts with project management kind of elements, and then it goes, okay, great. Now we need something for our design management piece, and we need a health and safety solution and a quality solution. And then once they get past the first project, it'd be really nice to have a tendering module now too, so that we've got a couple of pieces to the bow, and all of a sudden they've got an end-to-end solution that they need. And therein lies pricing modules and how that works. So again, it's then getting over that type of price point hurdle and the value proposition conversations. So
good one. Yeah, no, our headspace is very much similar. Obviously we're looking to tick off a lot of those boxes as a team. But I think what I'm really interested in is like, you look at the industry right now, you go, the Olympics are coming, there's new stadium, there's federal government funding. Like, what do businesses need to do to kind of get to the point where they're going to be in the game? What do you think they need to do? Is it like getting these systems sorted out, or getting their name out there, or
from a builder perspective? I think it's I think there's plenty of opportunity in the space that from my perspective, it's about really trying to put. Obviously, everyone's putting their local spin, trying to say, obviously we're local here. We want to put our name forward and have a crack at this. But it's the whole value proposition for everyone is the conversation that I think needs to be had, which is there's obviously a legacy piece to the games and what that stakeholder wants from a overall picture of the infrastructure and what happens afterwards. So I think that's a big part of the proposition that builders need to consider, where their point solution goes and how they best understand that. But also, what does the supply chain need as well behind it in terms of building it out as well. So I think it's a whole of stakeholder approach, which again is probably nothing new, but I really see the opportunity for government to go set some really good parameters around what do we want from an end use perspective. because I think historically we've gone for lowest price and it hasn't really built the most value for us. So I think there's plenty in the construction space talking about what does the actual value proposition look like for government, for legacy, for end users, and the industry as a whole from a construction perspective. And let's have that narrative conversation now, and not start doing it once we've already built it, because it's a bit of a loss. So I think if I was a builder right now, I'd be trying to understand how can I contractually get the best out of some of these projects, and what can we do with the supply chain to help deliver that for government, but also from a legacy piece. I think that digital construction play, the solutions that can help drive that narrative and help deliver that is the conversation I'd be having now of, okay, I don't want to be solving these problems in the thick of it. So let's now start getting ahead and paint that picture by the time tendering comes around, because it's not going to be far off. And
it's a good point.
There was a conversation around that a few years ago when the large hospital play was being had in Queensland, because that's I'm in this market, that's the bit I know. But there was a heap of conversation around, okay, when we're talking about maintenance mode for these facilities, how can we really start to drive best outcomes for those users? And it felt like an opportunity missed, that it didn't really kick on beyond some of the conversations we'd already had. But I think that conversation can really get kicked up again and solved, hopefully. And obviously, hence why I'm here. I think you guys have a big part to play in that, because these problems and challenges we're talking about, you guys are on your way solving. So I guess a question to you is, how is that conversation being had from your perspective? Is that the stuff you guys are seeing? Because I feel that at a local level, there's parts of the industry talking about it, but I haven't seen it at a broader scale yet.
I mean, I think, just very quickly, I slice it into two big chunks: the tier ones who are struggling to move fast enough, and then versus a mid-sized builder we can go to and offer them of something that's very complete and just up level them like immediately from like paper and Excel to like this level. And so to me, they're just two very separate conversations. And the tier ones, they get a tricky project, everything's project driven, and they can bring us in and they can get value, but the hierarchy and the bureaucracy is so challenging for them, versus someone where it's got 3, 4, 5 project managers. They all are like wanting to do things better, and it's like really moves faster. But yeah, sorry, Michael.
No, it's like, I mean, it's everything we're saying here, but asking the right questions, like you're talking about, Ryan, you got to, you can only manage what you can measure. And if you're asking those, the stakeholder engagement means asking the right questions. What are we going to track on this project? And to use your analogy of this marathon, runner who's got the Garmin that's telling him how quick those split times are and what's the cadence like, and you can see there's a lot of measurements happening within a run, within a race. Like, how's the heart rate, and if I'm going to make this marathon, I've got to sort of slow down here. And so I think when we come to these projects, being able to know what we've got to track. Because how are we ever going to perform if we're not tracking the right thing? It's like you're turning up to a marathon and you've got no idea what you do. You haven't run a race before, and I'm just going to go out the gate as fast as I can because that's what I got to do to win, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, there's much more. You got to hydrate right. You got to follow the right person. You got to get the cadence right. You've got to understand so much more to it. I mean, you come to these big projects, and so the government's got to ask the right questions. What do we want out of this project at the end? The builder's got to be asking the right questions. How do we deliver this over the next 2-3 years? What's coming up now? And so if you haven't got a finger on the pulse, like literally we're talking about like it's the same sort of thing. And so I mean, what we've found as we're building out Deep Space is there are some really consistent things that we've got to get right on a project. and we need the analytics there. We've standardized some key, KPIs, if you like, around this is what is required on a project every time. It might be flavored a bit different because, this is a 100-meter sprint and this one's a, 42-kilometer. There might be different ways that we measure or KPIs that are going to come up, but we've really got to know what we're asking.
Yeah, and I agree holistically with all of that, and at a pointed element, we're looking at some stuff around, as I said, like digital traceability for building products. So we're talking about an opportunity where we can potentially have the ability to eliminate kind of non-conforming building products out of the system by using technology to really drive traceability of where a design intent for a product starts, goes through some hold points on the supply chain to make sure, hey, I've now manufactured this and it's designed, built as intended, and well, now I've done some modification and fabricated and have modified the original intent slightly, but it still meets the need of what the install requirement is. And now I'm the constructor who's installing it as per the design. Well, when you look at the spend coming up with the Olympic Games, there's a really good industry problem that can be solved by having a bit of a think about the value proposition piece up front, look at the tools that can solve that for you, and then make sure we're not in a position where, we've just had to set up, specialist authorities in certain states to resolve, flammable cladding. So for me, I think there's massive opportunity to use, use technology to support the way we build, and particularly using the analogy of what we're talking about before, really start to get the pulse check on how we're performing, what's our program like, what's our QA requirements for handover, all those bits in one place can really leave a legacy. So I think that's the opportunity.
Do you want to explain that material traceability a bit more? Like, is it driven by carbon? Is it driven by compliance? Like, the government's obviously behind some of it. What does it mean?
Yeah, look, it definitely started with kind of the environmental component and the need for kind of green material, but it's certainly evolved since, where there's been a working group of a variety of different associations working on it, but essentially trying to get to a point where, look, we can do some more kind of Green Star rated buildings and elements from that where we can just keep doing it as we do it. But as we know, it's construction is quite complicated. There's a number of the supply chain itself, there's a number of parties on each product on the way through. So what was driven by necessity of kind of accounting standards and some environmental requirements is now kind of evolved into where do products come from, how do we understand it in more detail, and how do we actually get traceability and verification of all of that. So I guess that's where the whole digital traceability and sustainable products process was born.
Yeah. It's going to be all data in the end. Is there a gold standard for data for that right now, or is it a bit on paper spread all over the place, or what?
Well, there are. So there's like GS1, which have got a kind of a seat at the table at the moment, trying to have a conversation. But it's no different to probably the journey you guys have lived through with the BIM journey. They're starting at, what language do we talk? Because it's not, across a number of geographies, it's got to be a global standard because of where the products are coming from.
Yep.
So it's actually following a very similar logic to what we've seen in other places before. So it's very much at the how does it talk, and then the mapping bit of, okay, it's great. I might have certainly like a design intent and some kind of hold and witness points for how I install it, but depending on the product, it might have some certification requirements it's going to meet. So then has layers of complexity that a system will need to meet. So So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, it sounds like something that you need an expert consultant like you to help with, because it's one of those things that, like on the cutting edge, things changing quickly, and you need help.
Well, less me and probably more so you guys, but
Together, mate, we'll do it together.
yeah.
What other trends do you see? Like, I guess certain things have been talked about and are not fully realised. You got modular, prefab. There's
Yeah.
all types of offsite manufacture. Like, what do you see as kind of some of the important things in the coming years for the industry?
Yeah, look, I think you guys touched on it earlier about some of the tier one stuff. It's not moving as quick as I think probably everyone intended. So similar conversations we're having before, we're kind of still having now. So I think the modularization and kind of offsite fabrication component, I think still has a ways to go, but I see that as probably the biggest opportunity still, where we can actually really de-risk projects properly, where again, if I put my health and safety lens on, where we can delete someone working at height because we can build it off the ground in a factory, pump out the modular component, and then use our good crane crews to kind of fabricate it and put it together on site. I think that's where the end component gets to, of where the biggest change in construction will come.
Yeah, because you're getting towards manufacturer thinking,
Yeah,
which we're really not there yet. We're too fragmented, right?
correct. But I think that's where it eventually gets to, because that whole do more with less conversation really hasn't solved itself as yet. But it's going through the step processes and having the developers or the clients that are willing to really take the punt. I think everyone's really looking for those projects to test them out on. So there's more and more modular construction happening, which I think is good. We're seeing a lot. Like I do some work, a lot of work with GemLife, and they're looking at first of their kind of vertical modular land lease environments. So apartments that are pods essentially that can be relocated after someone occupies it. So stuff like that is
cool.
pretty cool. So there's more of it happening, but I think as we in Australia really start to test this stuff, it'll evolve. But I think that's probably the big change or the big opportunity at the moment. But it's just probably moving slower than everyone expected.
Do you think the clients have to step up a bit more here, and like they're the ones that could drive it? Because they've got something in mind that they want to build, and then they kind of throw it over the fence and let everybody else handle it. And they're obviously got a pretty narrow vision. We're going to do the same thing we've been doing for 40 years. We're not going to change too much. Like who's the biggest driving opportunity here?
Well, probably my left field answer would be the banks that finance it. I think the financiers have a big part to play. I think the insurance companies in time have a big part to play in terms of there's a lot of insurance claims that comes with traditional building styles. So I think once financiers and developers really start to understand the opportunity in it, and like at the end of the day, we want to be able to build more infrastructure at a lower cost. So everyone's well aware of the productivity problem. So I think this is the part that these types of projects have to play. But I think a developer has a big part in terms of here's my vision, but asking the right questions of how can we do this differently? How can I'm sitting here at a feasibility stage going, I need to build a project for 130 million. You're telling me it's 170. Well, how can I make this work and not just kick the can down the road and wait for time to solve it for me? What's left field that can make it work? So I think, the real boring answer is it's everybody, but I think
follow the money.
Yeah, I think it's a follow the money answer, which is the financiers going, you know what? We've seen this operate in a kind of established region globally, i.e. it might be the UK or it might be the US or somewhere like that, and this model has worked. Let's have a crack, and everyone's doing it kind of piece by piece and small projects and testing the waters, and you want someone to really have a bit of brashness to it and go, let's go and really hit it hard, and then watch the industry change, because it will happen.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. That's that's an area I haven't thought about too much. That's pretty enlightening. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool. I mean, you guys and some of the stuff, particularly in the Middle East at the moment, and what they're doing over there. Is there anything like that that you're seeing where there's this massive difference of approach in terms of how we build?
Yeah, they have like full massive like government funded kind of alternative construction methodology projects, if you know what I mean. And so they'll go, here we want it to be prefab, modular, and you're going to build 500 homes or whatever. So the scale is different, but I think like anything in Australia, people want to do the pilots, but they don't have kind of the funding or the guts to do the pilots sometimes. Whereas if like that case happens in Saudi, it's like, okay, they're going to be able to learn a lot. Might not get it perfect, but then you'll be, you'll be able to do it later.
It's not a 4-year political term. It's a
we're
going to be doing this for 30 years. So I'm the king. So we're going to make this work.
That's right. Do the blessing and move on. Yeah. Because look, and being closer to home, I see like Hutchies have a really good modular business, and they pump out a serious amount of work. I see a local builder up here called McNabb. They've got a decent workbook, and they've just set up a modular kind of prefab business unit. So there are businesses looking at the opportunity and going, future, this is potentially the solution of how we build. But I think it's that forward workbook to actually set up the momentum for those full-time builders, I'll call them, to actually get the production line going, because it is more of a manufacturing component. Obviously, developer builder model probably won't happen because they just go from one to the next. But I think for those long cycle builders with a longer history of doing that, I think there's an opportunity if the forward production line's there from a contract perspective.
Very cool. Well, I think that's a really good spot maybe to even hit pause on this and maybe pick this up on the next podcast as well. But it's been so good to talk to you, Ryan. Really enlightening. Lots of little nuggets in there. Maybe I'd probably like to finish off with some sort of question about, is Ryan going to be behind the computer, behind software, developing solutions, or is he going to kind of get that hard hat back on, the high vis, get back out on site, start running another marathon out there? Where's next for you, mate?
Short answer is I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying the journey at the moment, but I think reality is for me, I really like both parts, but I think there's an affinity to the technology component for me that I just can't shake. So I think longer term, that's certainly where I'll be. I like
building.
I like seeing a small idea scale.
That's right. Solve the problem for many people at once, right?
That's it. So I just can't shake that bit of me. So, obviously, seeing you guys early days and what you were doing and where you are now, you can see that bit, and it gives you that spark, and it makes you think about where things can go. So for me, I think that's that bit for me where I'd like to get back into that space at some point. It was certainly an exciting journey for me, and as I said, watching from a distance of what you guys are doing is just so freaking cool. So I think that's the place for me in the future.
Well, we're going to have to pick this up in part 2 down the track too.
At the pub, the pub one? Is that the
pub?
Yeah, there's a few more stories I will tell you
about. Thank you so much, Ryan. It was awesome. How can people find you, find your business? Is it LinkedIn or online, or how can they get it?
Yeah, we're LinkedIn and online. So Olympus Insights is the business, and obviously Ryan Alexiou on LinkedIn. So that's the main place for me. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, mate.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, mate.